What a beautiful evening it is. I'm all kicked to go live today and talk about one of the most interesting topics that we would generally have most discussed, most debated, and controversial topic, unconventional topic, especially when it comes to our dogs. We have a lot of common, views about how dogs live, how dogs. What are the best foods that dogs can have, what is the kind of lifestyle our dogs have, and most of it comes from information on the internet and from experience. So today I'm going to try and share a new perspective to you guys, and let's give a couple more minutes for a few more people to join in maybe. Hello Sam. Hi Rana. Pooja. Yes, it's a great topic. Thank you so much. Yes. So while everybody is getting online, let me see if I can post a question for all those who have already joined in. Okay. All right. Now, I have a question. I hope you're able to see it on the screen. And if you're able to see it on the screen, then please do respond. So the question that I have for you today is, do you have any specific expectations from this live conversation? So that, while we go on with our chat and while more people join in, I can get an idea as to what you guys want to know specifically. Yeah, so there's someone who has said, I'd like to know more about Raw. Of course, we are going to do that straight away. What about who else? Okay, okay. So the question is, Sapna, the question is, any specific expectations you have from this live conversation? Of course, we're going to talk about Raw as a diet, but is there something specific you'd like to know? All right, Vikramjeet says you want to know about barf. All right. So barf is a kind of raw. It is one way of raw feeding. Hi, Rachel. You're a raw feeding veterinary nurse from the UK. Welcome in. I hope you can pitch in while I talk. Okay. Vikramjeet says, please describe briefly pros and cons. Yes, will do for sure. Is raw diet an option in India? Very much, Mansi. Very much. Raw diet is an option in India, which is why I'm here for this talk today. Let's hope by the end of this talk we can motivate ourselves to actually go ahead and try this diet in this country. I've been okay. Just to introduce myself, because there are a good number of us in there. My name is Devisri Sarkar. I have been I have been in the pet industry for the last 12 years. I kick-started, of course, almost 16 years back with my first dog as a pet parent. And I had 5 dogs, slowly and steadily. And each dog coming in with a specific genetic or a medical condition or a behavioral problem. 15 or 16 years ago, it was a very big deal to get any amount of information except the classical concepts that were available on the internet. So I had to go ahead and spend a lot of time researching, learning, and then trying out different methods on my dogs so that I could give them a good quality life, while they were with me. Most people do not do that. They tend to go by advice of vets and shopkeepers, pet shop owners, breeders, also great sources of information if they are well read and have good information. But slowly and steadily, with these years of reading up and with my research background, I began to excel in 2 or 3 different fields. One was canine nutrition, of course, which is what is the best food to feed to my dogs. From there, I moved on to behavior, canine behavior, and also started working on canine ethology. Now, ethology that you people would, if any of you understand what canine ethology is about, it is trying to understand what our dogs would do when they are living in a natural environment, not necessarily living with us in our homes as pets. That's not a necessarily natural environment for our dogs. But if I am in a natural environment, then what is the best kind of quality of life that I can give my dog? That kind of is what I would define as ethology. And I did a lot of studies on this in an organic fashion. I did quite a few different courses on nutrition and canine behavior. My experience and knowledge that I share with you today is actually a combination, like a bouquet of all the same. And today we will focus on raw feeding, of course, as a diet option for our dogs. Right. Hello. Yes. Hi, everybody. Hi, Pinakshi. Hey, Ian. Wonderful. Um, so Sapna says raw feeding is something new in India. You're right. Raw feeding came actually worldwide. Raw feeding has become known over the past 20 to 25 years. In India, we've just about started to accept. I still remember 8 years, 12 years back when I came back from the UK, understanding the concept of raw feeding. And I knew my dogs in the UK had done very well on raw in that environment. And they were thriving, doing well. They had healthy coats. They had really good body structures, musculature. They had clean teeth. They were active dogs. And I wanted to give them the same diet when I came into India. And that was the first time that I faced my challenges. So today I'll spend about 5 minutes to share the journey with you guys so that you understand. Some of you will probably even connect with it because some of you probably are in various steps of that journey, trying to understand whether you should do raw, what are the problems there are. And there are vets telling you different things, there are pet shop owners telling you different things. There is all this hype around cooked foods and kibbles that are already available, easily available around you. And all of that kind of makes you confused as to whether raw could be an option in a country like India. The normal stuff that I keep hearing is it's a tropical country, so meat quality isn't as good. And so, meat, of course, at the end of the day is going to be contaminated. It could have bacteria, which means I could fall sick. My dogs could have stomach upsets. There is a very interesting one that I keep hearing during my consultations. If I give raw to my dog, my dogs will get aggressive. So I'm here to tell you that none of this is true. The diet does not define aggression or health of a dog. Diet is basically what is the best kind of food that you can give to your dog so that you can ensure that a dog has the best possible life. When I say life, it would include not just age in terms of longevity, but also quality of life, which would include things like fitness, both physical and mental, as well as the confidence and the mental ability, curiosity, the ability to socialize, be more outgoing. All of these aspects together come together to bring a healthy dog. And diet is one of the key things that will keep your dog, not only fit and strong mentally and physically, but also will give them the ability to cope with their environment and different situations. It will also help build a very strong immune system. So, Mansi says the quality of raw food that we get, especially non-veg, isn't up to the mark. Do you mean in India, Mansi? All right. Arun says, yes, you need a complete product supplier, though. Where most people get into trouble is trying to balance all the protein, carbohydrates, organ, muscle, and bone. Yes, very fair point. And we are going to touch upon that today as one of the points of the talk. Coming back to what I was talking about, why a good diet? First of all, let's talk about why a good diet. Why do you think all of you would want to feed a good diet to your dogs? Let's not talk about what kind of diet first. Let's talk about why would you want to give a good diet to your dogs? Yeah, all right. Healthy dog food is new globally. Can raw feeding cause behavior change? I'm sorry, guys. Yes, all right. Yes. All right. So what I'm hearing, I'm seeing a few comments. I can't read every one of them because there's a whole lot of comments coming in together. But what I gathered from there is a good diet is one which a dog enjoys eating. That is one that has come up. Then there's another one is a good balance. I see something that says good balance. Out of India, raw meat options are more. I live in north of India. We have less options to feed. All right, Joel. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's come back to the topic now. So when we are talking about diet and we look at a good diet for a dog, we look at a nutrition. When I say nutrition, a dog's diet needs to, just like in humans, a diet needs to consist of proteins, carbohydrates, and minerals. You also have a same concept when it comes to dog food. Any kind of diet needs to have a right balance of proteins, carbohydrates, minerals, and vitamins. Okay. Now, proteins and carbohydrates are where they form the staple in any diet. But a dog is a carnivore, and all of us know that the kind of dentition that they have and the kind of digestive system that they have ensure is that of predominantly a carnivore. Now, over the last 12 to 14,000 years that they have gotten domesticated and lived alongside humans in settlements, they have learned to pick up refuse food from the humans living that they live around, and they do manage to process carbohydrates also. However, it's what I would look at as not necessarily a staple. It would be something that they would enjoy once in a while as a treat, but will not provide them with the right kind of nutrition for their complete growth. What they would need is definitely proteins. Almost 60 to 65% of their meat needs to be of their diet needs to be proteins. And then you talk about minerals like calcium and phosphorus, which are available in bones. And then you talk about vitamins, which are the micronutrients, which consist of all the different kinds of B vitamins, vitamin A, beta carotenes, flavonoids, all of which are coming across in a combination of animal protein and a little bit of plant protein or vegetable, which can be given to a dog. Now, A.K. Mittal says if humans can lead a healthy life on raw and home cooked food, then why not pets? Absolutely. Why not pets? Actually, if you look at it from an ethological standpoint, pets, of course, live with us as humans. But if there is an animal living in the wild, where does he get cooked food? Where does he get anything else? I've put this poll on your page, guys. Please click on it. Tell me what kind of food do you currently give your dogs, and we'll be able to understand better. So when we look at these kinds of diets at this point of time, there are four main kinds of diets that are easily available in India. One, of course, is the most easily available kibble-based dog foods, which are found in shops and which are our convenience food. When I say convenience food, it's like instant food for humans. It's good for you when you eat once in a while and when you're traveling. But kibble-based diets, have a lot of preservatives in them. They also contain a lot of grains and carbohydrates. And at the same point, it is while it's easily available and it's convenient for you when you to come and give your dog once you come back from office, it is definitely not something that will help your dog sustain, simply because of the way it has been made. Kibble based diet comes from a background of, refuse meats that are coming from the human environment. When humans eat meat, which is used in restaurants, etc., the shops then take the remaining amount of meat and use it along with their other good foods in order to create a kibble based grain. And that is what is given in kibble. Fresh cooked, of course, you're going ahead and sourcing your own kind of meats over there, and you are cooking the food for you and ensuring that the bacteria has been removed and all of it has been come out. But raw, of course, is the easiest and the best way to ensure that your dog is getting a natural nutrition. Now, when I say natural nutrition, raw food in its natural form has almost 70% of moisture. It also has proteins. It also has minerals, everything that is bioavailable to the animal. just as his gut would get if it were out in a natural environment. And so when we talk about raw diets, it is the easiest thing that you can give your dog, even if you're a vegetarian, because you don't have to cook it in your kitchen. You don't have to, you don't have to bring it out and cut it and put it across, because you can find it online in shops as long as you're able to source from the right place. Now, that is where I say that raw becomes easy to source. Although this is a controversial topic, we always say that it is easier to source because you don't have to spend a lot of time processing it. Right. Coming back to the benefits of the raw diet. Um, why is raw diet really good? It's good because A, it's the natural diet of a dog. When I have incisors and canines that have been created to tear meat and cut the meat into pieces and then ingest it, the raw meat is the easiest and the best way that the dog can utilize his jaws with the structure of jaw that he has, in order to ensure that he has the um, uh, right kind of jaw work and exercise in order to have his food. Now when he comes when he digests that food, his gut is more acidic. The dog's gut is much more acidic, and because it is more acidic, you will be able to ensure that raw itself, being an acidic food, has the right pH value for the dog to digest in a more natural fashion. When you come to raw feeding, I'm sorry, I'm getting, let us know exactly what in raw food are we talking about, specific pieces or parts. Yes, I will do that. Coming back. So what does the raw food then have? It has the most bioavailable nutrients, that is allowing the animal to get the best use of the proteins which are not heat treated, the oils and the fats which are not heat treated and therefore do not become insoluble and rancid when it comes to digestion, and therefore do not sit next to the pancreas in order to ensure that it turns into fat for the body. It's much more bioavailable, and at the end of the day, it is easily much more digestible to the dog. The raw food in itself ensures that there is much healthier gut microbes available to the dog, because it's not messing with the pH value of the stomach. Yeah. Also, isn't a boiled diet not easily digested than raw? Prithviraj, no, a boiled diet is basically highly heat treated. And when it is heat treated, it simply means that the proteins, the proteins would have ended up getting broken down, and much of the proteins are not bioavailable to the animal anymore, because it has gotten broken down into other forms by the heat treatment itself. So yes, while it is easily digested, it is also not as bioavailable to the dog as it would in a raw format. Yes. Again, why is acidic preferred? Does the pet not generate acid inside just like humans? No, the dog himself, the dog's gut itself is a lot more acidic. They generally have a pH value between 3 to 5 in their guts. And when they are eating raw food, which is anyways acidic in nature, it is the right bioenvironment that's optimal for digestion for the dog. And so the gut does not need to overwork in order to produce the right kind of acids for digestion. If you end up giving more vegetables or alkaline foods to your dog, then the gut, being more acidic, will end up releasing more acid in order to digest the alkaline foods and make them more available for digestion. As a result, you will find dogs that end up having a little more extra greens or vegetables, they end up producing bile vomit a lot more. So no, while cooking is good, raw is better. Now, once you all try it out, you will see the difference in the way your dog digests, and that is what makes it sense. But let's come back to the benefits of the raw diet. Because the nutrients are more bioavailable, even smaller quantities of the meat will be more than enough to give your dog a really good meal. So while you might be giving about 500 grams of chicken rice to your dog in terms of nutrition when you're doing a cooked food, when you end up doing raw, you might just give about 200 to 300 grams, but it is a power packed meal and also ensures that the dog is enjoying it because he has to chew the natural way that he's supposed to chew. And he's also able to digest and make the most use of absorbing that food in his gut. So, smaller quantities, but power packed. And as a result, you have small, compact poop. So, the digestive system works optimally, absorbs more, and therefore releases much lesser waste. So your poop quantities become smaller. A lot of people think that raw causes constipation, but it's not really constipation. It's actually excellent absorption of the food. It's getting utilized by the dog's body to the maximum possible way. And therefore, there is very little waste or fecal matter that comes out. Now, when you have foods that are that well available to the dog and they're able to utilize all the nutrients that are present in the meal itself, you do not need to supplement with functional foods anymore. When I say functional foods, foods that are specifically enriched with supplements in order to provide the dog with a balanced nutrition. So if you're giving cooked food or if you're giving kibble, more often than not, you will find that your vets will tell you to add supplements to it. Now, I've had dogs for the last 14 years, and I have mentored another 450 dogs across India on transitioning to raw. And for most of their life, unless they have a specific medical condition, it always turns out that we do not need to give any specific supplements to the dogs because most of the all supplements are present within the meat-based diet itself if you're giving it raw. Especially the B vitamins and the minerals, which get broken down when they are heat treated by cooking or even in the kibble, which is why in kibble you will find that these are separately injected into the meat, into the grains, in order to ensure that the dog gets a more balanced diet. So the kibble looks balanced because it has been researched and those chemicals have been put in into the kibble grains to ensure that vitamins are synthetically available in the dog's food. But in raw, the meat itself, if given in the right proportions and the right parts, will have everything, all the balanced macronutrients as well as micronutrients, which means you don't have to supplement at all unless there is a specific medical condition that comes with age and stuff like that. So can we talk briefly about what kind of nutrients are available? So mostly muscle meat will contain proteins and fats. Bones, of course, will contain calcium, phosphorus to a large extent. Then you have heart, which contains good amounts of B vitamins, heart of the animal, chicken heart, beef heart, liver, beef heart, lamb heart. All of these have high amounts of taurine and also excellent quantities of B vitamins. So we always say that heart, while it comes under muscles, is still a very rich, good source of B vitamins to the animal. And then you have organs. Now, organs comprise of any parts of the animal body, the prey's body, which could have, which is secreting something. So the liver secretes enzymes, and therefore it is an organ. The kidney again secretes some stuff, and that is an organ. Then you have pancreas, and then you have the glands. Then you have the testicles. All of them do some amount of secretory work, and therefore they are not muscles, they are organs. So organs, most organs in a prey animal's body would have B vitamins and minerals as a mix, and they're rich sources of B vitamins and minerals. Now, for those of you, there are some people who talked about um, organs and what should it contain. There are a lot of charts on the websites, and moving forward, at least towards the end of the talk, I will send you some links to some pages where you will have some good information around what each organ contains and what is the nutrient profile. It's easily available on the internet as long as you search for raw beef liver. What does it contain? Nutrient profile, and you'll be able to see all that it has. That is an easier way to do it, but I will also be able to send you links at the end of this talk so that you can get an idea. All right. And then when it comes to stomach organs, the stomach is actually a muscle. It basically carries the food that the cow or the goat or the chicken is eating. And when it's eating that, it's sitting inside this bag, which also releases enzymes to break down the prey food. And when it is breaking that down, you will have grass eating animals like cows and goats ending up releasing the enzymes to break down those greens. And when they release the enzymes to break down those greens, they are available in the stomach contents of the animal. Dogs in the wild would love to go in and tear open the gut. That's almost the first thing that they do. You know, they'll rip open the gut and then they get out stomach contents. Some amount of it gets ingested along with the stomach muscle, and that is what we call tripe, by the way. So tripe is actually part of muscle when it comes to a component in a raw diet. It is actually a part of muscle, but it does contain the green matter. Now, herein comes the question that a few people had asked me, saying that why not carbohydrates? I said, no, carbohydrates are available. A dog does require carbohydrates in his diet, but not as a staple food. It requires it in about 15 to 20%. And mostly when you eat a good quantity of proteins, at least for a dog, he has the digestive system has a process known as glycogenesis that can convert about 30 to 40% of the proteins into glucose, which is then the sugar that is available for providing energy for maintaining the physical functions of the body. And the brain also requires carbohydrates for functioning well, but you don't need to provide plant-based carbohydrates for that, because the animal protein itself can be converted into carbohydrate in a dog's digestive system. So there, that will answer your question on why you don't need to separately give carbohydrates to a diet. When you have a prey model raw diet, which is one of the kind of raw diets that we do, and we will get to that in the next 2 minutes, you will ensure that you give good quality proteins to the dog so that some of that gets converted into carbohydrates and becomes a good source of carbohydrate for the dog. Besides that, if you look at chlorophyll is the one, chlorophyll and cellulose are the two things that a dog cannot digest on its own. So when you end up having the gut contents of the prey, like the cow or the lamb, which is available in the stomach, they already have released the enzymes required in order to break down those greens. And so now it becomes more available to the carnivorous dog that is trying to ingest tripe. So tripe is actually it's almost considered a superfood in the raw feeding diet. Now, why am I putting all these contents together for you? To tell you that raw feeding in itself is not, it doesn't mean that you're just picking up meat, from the shop. You're just picking up a chicken breast or a chicken leg and you're giving it to your dog and you say, hey, I'm feeding my dog raw. That's incorrect, because raw is a science in itself. It has the components and it has been researched over time that you do need to use the right kind of protein, right proportion of proteins, minerals, vitamins, bone, muscle meat. You need to ensure they are in the right proportions so that the dog can get a balanced nutrition out of it. When we as humans eat a meal, you can't just eat rice every single day. Like humans can eat rice. We are omnivores. We can have rice and dal for many, many days. But nutritionally, are you actually getting a good nutritional thing if you're eating dal and rice every day? No. The balanced diet for a human being consists of some amount of vegetables, some amount of dal, some amount of rice, and salads, all of that, so that you ensure that all the macronutrients and micronutrients are available. Similarly, a raw diet does need to have the right proportion of proteins, minerals, vitamins through the muscle meat, the bones, and the organs in the right proportions so that the dog can get a balanced diet. Otherwise, just like every other unbalanced meal, even the raw diet can be extremely hazardous to your pet over a period of time. Nothing will happen overnight, but over a period of time, you will have problems or dietary indeficiencies or shortcomings in nutritional profile. So always ensure that you have spoken to a nutritionist or a consultant when you create the diet chart for Raw for your dog. It's not a magical wand that will solve all your health problems for your dog. It is a diet at the end of the day, and it does require you to get with a nutritionist to provide that proportion for you, for your dog, because each dog is unique. Why are they unique? Because they'd have breed characteristics, they'd have different activity levels, they'd have different genetic traits. Some dogs might be born with heart conditions, some dogs might be born with a liver disease, some dogs might be larger dogs and therefore their bones are weaker. They could have arthritis and hip dysplasia. And everything, while the nutrients are available in a raw diet and easily available, you need to compensate by understanding the current medical and physical condition of the dog in order to decide what you need to give your dog for his particular diet. And that's where you need to ensure that you're interacting with someone who understands a raw diet and can prescribe a balanced diet for your dogs. Coming back to how do you start a raw diet? Yes, 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 I'm getting there. So we are talking about how do you start off with a raw diet. Now, when you have a raw diet, at this point of time, I know that some of you put across the poll. I'm unable to figure out how to get to the poll results. Saloni, if you're on, can you help me with the poll results? What diet is your pet currently on? Okay, I have tried to put across the poll results. Let's hope they come across now. All right. Right, let that come across because I think the Facebook is doing the calculations. But different kinds of, when we talk about how you start a raw diet, depending upon what kind of diet your dog is currently on, you do need to ensure that you have first transitioned them. All right, here comes the results of the poll. It says 28% of the people who are currently an audience are giving kibble to their dogs. Then there are 36% who are giving fresh cooked food with grain. There's 19% that are giving fresh cooked food without grain, and then there are about 17% of us who are doing raw food. So that's good that there are even 17% of us who are doing raw food right now. And what you want to do is ensure, first of all, more than anything else, whatever diet you give your dog, in order to move to a raw diet, you need to ensure that your dog has gotten used to digesting proteins more than digesting starch which comes from a carbohydrate based diet. So if you're having kibble or if you're doing fresh cooked food with grain, all of these are rich in carbohydrates. And if you want to transition to a raw diet, you do need to first move slowly to a diet that is without grain, which is higher in protein. Even if it is cooked, that's fine, but you need to move out of grain so that your dog can transition a little easier. If you're already doing fresh cooked food without grain, then you will know immediately that your dog is already used to the right kind of digestive process in order to process proteins and the grain free foods, and then raw becomes very easy for him to transition into. However, when it comes to kibble and fresh cooked with grain, we generally prefer that the safest way to do it is to first transition to grain free and then do a cold turkey into raw. When I say cold turkey, there are different philosophies. Like, there are many, many countries where raw is being fed currently to pets, and there are all kinds of philosophies around how you want to transition. Over the last 14 years that I've been doing raw, I've found that the safest way to transition, while you can transition any other way, the safest way for most dogs to transition is to transition cold turkey. When I say cold turkey, you basically finish your cooked meal or your kibble meal the previous night. The next morning, go out for a walk, pee and poop. You've emptied your gut, and you can then start cold turkey with raw. Okay, now when you can start cold turkey with raw, you're basically your transition is in the amount that you give in one go. Just like if you kickstart giving food to a puppy, you start off with about 5 to 6 meals a day. so that the body ingests a little at a time and does not get overwhelmed by an extremely rich diet. You kickstart with giving smaller quantities. So transition involves feeding smaller quantities, in more frequent meals, and slowly and steadily, as your dog gets used to absorbing and digesting the new food, you then you finally end up at either 2 meals. And if you have a really fit dog, like in the wild, dogs will hunt only once a day. So they have one big meal a day and then they're done for the day. So there are raw fed dogs that survive and thrive on having one big meal a day, but that's completely fine. You can choose to do 2 meals a day if you have to, because that's what most of us end up doing for our adult dogs anyways. So when you transition, I specifically recommend that you go cold turkey, smaller quantities over larger periods of time, over more number of meals. And that is how, watch for poop. So you have to basically become your own dog's poop doctor. I say poop doctor because the poop is the best way to tell whether your dog is able to digest the meat or not. If the poop is slightly on the looser side, that means you're giving more meat. You need to add a little bit of bone so that it becomes a little, it becomes a little more compact. The poop becomes more compact. If it's very powdery and very hard and you find that the dog is getting constipated, then you know that you've given too much bone and you need to tweak to a slightly more quantity of meat in proportion. Mostly the proportion of meat to bone in a raw diet is around 75-25 on an average. It could even go to 80-20 for a younger dog that's more active. And for an older dog that needs more calcium and phosphorus, you might want to do a little more bone. So it varies between 70-30 to 80-20, depending upon the activity levels and the age of your dog. And that is the base proportion. The muscle meat consists of, like I said, heart and muscle parts. The organ part is separate, will be anything between 10 to 15% of the overall meal, and that will consist of your micronutrients, which is the vitamins and minerals. Okay, now that's the generic proportion that you would have when you want to do. But when you're transitioning, you will start with the easiest ones, that is muscle and bone. And you do that for 7 days. If you find the poop is looking fine, you move on to the next step, which is you add one more, or you probably add an organ, or you'll add a piece of heart, and then again wait for the system to stabilize with the new piece. Once you've gotten yourself to what is broadly a balanced proportion for your dog's meal, you can then choose to start rotating meats. Now, rotation of meats is very important. Chicken is predominantly a grain-fed animal. A chicken in an India scenario is just basically being farmed in large quantities because human consumption of chicken is very high. You will realize that they're fed grains and they're kept in cages and then they're slaughtered really fast for food for consumption. So obviously a chicken meat is lower in protein. It's much simpler and easier to digest. So when you're transitioning into a raw diet, you will almost always start off with chicken. It's not the ideal diet, but it is still a simpler meat that's easier to digest for a dog that is transitioning into raw. So you always kickstart with a piece. Also, a chicken is a smaller animal, so the proportion of meat to bone will be kind of good. So chicken, being a bird, will have a little more of bone in it. So you could choose to add a little more of boneless alongside to ensure that you're keeping your proportions in place. But chicken is the meat that you want to start transitioning with. And as the dog gets used to chicken, you then start adding bits and pieces of grain-fed lamb or beef. In India, you also have pork. You also have turkey. Nowadays, you have a lot. 12 years ago, I couldn't think of finding any of these. You have turkey available. You have duck available. You have pork available. You have buffalo available. You also have country chickens available now, more organic ones. You have quail available. So all of these are the kind of varieties of meat that you rotate over time. And just to remember, all you have to do is watch poop. There is no formula. You don't need to just sit down and weigh it to the exact proportion. As long as you stick to the larger proportion of 80 20 sorry 70 15 and 5, that is 70 being proteins, bone being about 15, and 5 to 10 being organs. As long as you broadly stick to that over a couple of weeks, you are good. You just need to ensure that the poop is consistent and not getting too loose or too powdery, and you have actually figured out the right proportion for your dog. So it doesn't need you to be exact. Over time you can actually eyeball the amount of meat that you do it, put it in a bowl. The different types of meats are what provide the flavor to the dog's diet, and they really enjoy it. And that's how we go about ensuring that we transition into raw. It generally takes about a month to month and a half to completely transition into a diet if you go slow and steady. And slow and steady is the important way to go, as so that your dog can stay can have a safe transition. Initially, when the dog is beginning to digest and utilize the raw food, you will find that he will go through what is known as a detox phase, where everything that is going on in his system, the toxins that were coming out from the food that he was eating before, that are stored in the pores of his body, start coming out. So you start seeing discharge in the eyes. If he had a ear problem, you will see a flare up of yeast in the dog's ears. You will also see a little more dandruff come up before the dog now starts utilizing the raw diet, and it starts absorbing in his system completely. So it generally takes about a week or two. You see a flare up of symptoms. It is called the detox phase. And slowly and steadily, the dog is then a raw fed dog. And then all you have to do is keep flexing your meats. It's fun actually watching, finding out new kinds of sources of meats to go and get it, go and get it from the market to give your dog, because for him it's a new experiment. It's a new fun thing to do. So that's how you would look at transitioning your dog. Then we come to availability of raw food. I saw a lot of people saying that in different parts of India, meats are not necessarily available. We have a group of we have a group here of existing raw feeders, called Raw Feeders India on Facebook. There are people from different parts of the country over there. They're already feeding raw. If you're already feeding raw, then you be a part of your group, and they already have sourced good butchers or places where they interact with, and they get the right quality of meat for their animals over there already. Now, how do you really select the kind of meat for raw? Always remember that because you're going to feed this raw, you need to ensure in an India environment that you have bought it fresh. So when I say fresh, it is important that you ensure you get with your butcher, strike up a relationship with your butcher, so that you can speak to him saying, hey, I need about 1 week's worth of meat now. And since my dog eats about 500 grams a day, I need 7 days worth of meat. So I get about 8, 10 kgs of meat, and give me a good time when I can go and get fresh meat from you. Most butchers would like to, if you're a regular customer with them, would call you up and tell you that the meat has been fresh cut. It is advisable to go early in the morning, especially in a tropical country such as ours, where temperatures go really high in the daytime, to ensure that you're going either early in the evening or later in the or early in the morning or later in the evening to go and pick up your meats from the butchers, because it's cooler at that time. Fresh cut meat does not have any bacteria on it because it is freshly slaughtered. You'll find that it's almost odorless. It has no crazy smells that you would get in meats that have been hung out for a period of time. It's pink. It still has a good it has good suppleness in it, and it's not hard and rubbery. You pick it up, put it into boxes, get it home, and pop it into the freezer as per your day by day proportions. And when you get it on a day by day proportion, you will realize that every time you pick up one box, use that box. Don't put larger quantities. Just give 1 day's meal in one box. So 7 days, 7 boxes. Do not, if you open and thaw on a regular basis, then you would probably find meat beginning to lose its nutritional value over time. But if you do one box a day for each day, then the meat can stay for over a month and a half, almost 2 months in the freezer, and you will realize that it stays fresh. So I buy 1 month's worth of raw food for my dogs. I have 5. and I get it for about 15 days. I have a large freezer that sits in my utility area, and I have one day when I'm gone to buy all this meat, and I put them all into boxes and I pop it into the freezer, and then it's basically one box a day that comes out. The others stay untouched, and so they stay fresh for months. And that's how you would want to ensure that you have raw food available to your dog. Searching for the good shops. We generally don't recommend supermarket meats, because supermarket meats spend a lot of time from slaughter to transportation from the farmhouse to the supermarket, and the cold chain itself might not be as healthy as or as sustainable as always, and then you might end up having contaminants. But your butcher shop, the local butcher shop, actually work very well in these places as long as you've found a good source. You speak to the butcher, find out the time when he slaughters or he's getting the fresh cut meat. Go in at that point of time, buy in large quantities so that you don't have to go every single day, and you are kind of sorted. Um, all right. I'm having a Labrador, age of 12 years. What type and we go? So, any specific questions, Sahaji Brahim? You can message me later after this talk, and I will be in a position to answer those questions for you, because it is specific to your dog, and it is better that we have more of a fact-finding discussion to figure out what we need to do. Um, Storing raw food, we did touch upon it. Get yourself a freezer, because you'd want to be able to get your boxes, some good quality boxes which are food grade, and put your meat quantities in the right proportions, and pop them one day's meal in one box, and put them into your freezer. And then you don't need to touch it. You don't have to open it again and again, because I think if you open it twice or thrice a day, you are thawing, and you're again putting it back inside. So you are opening your meats up to contamination. As long as you're able to keep one box for a day and finish that box, you're good. There is absolutely no contamination. We have done this test, I mean, with my dogs also on my kitchen counters. It's exactly like you would handle human grade meat, because we are not buying any pet grade meat. We are buying human grade meat, fresh cut from a shop, and we are putting it into boxes. It is not, it's exactly like we would deal with meats when we are making our own non-veg. The only difference being we are cooking it, and with our dogs we are putting it into a bowl and giving it to them raw. So there is no problem of contamination as long as you bought the meat from the right shops at the right time and packed it into boxes and put it in the freezer. I've been doing this for 15 years, and we've never ever had a problem of bacteria formation and all of that stuff. We've got fresh meats that the dogs have eaten. And then we talk about long-term effects in health. Now, of course, when you're giving a good diet to your dog, and raw being one of those options, like I just explained to you, if you're giving a good diet to your dog, you're ensuring that the dog has all the nutrients available to build a very strong system. Now, if you have a strong system, you have high immunity. If you have high immunity, you're obviously in a position to handle infections, handle diseases much better than most other dogs in that are probably having the other diets. So other diets, or they don't have a balanced diet in place. You then don't have the deficiencies. You have all the nutrients required for your body, and you have a very strong immune system. You have good gut health, which means your gut is in optimal function. When it is in optimal function, it simply means that your gut is able to make the best use of the meat, of the food that it is getting, and absorb it. That means you're making your system like a well-oiled machine. And a dog with a good system has better immunity, has shining, flawless skin. When he's chewing his food, he's got shiny teeth that don't need dental scaling and brushing, because he's naturally utilizing his teeth the way he would need to use them when he would be eating in the wild. In the wild, nobody brushes your dog's teeth. They're still quite nice and clean for a pretty long time, for a wild animal. So the teeth health is good, which means you don't have bacteria or plaque formation on your teeth, which means you don't have bacteria entering, unhealthy bacteria entering your gut. Your heart remains healthier, which means you're basically ensuring that any ailments that your dog would otherwise probably have much earlier in life are now getting decelerated. You're able to maintain a fit body for a longer period of time. So you can still have an aged dog, an older dog, a senior dog, but extremely active dog. But as opposed to a dog that has a nutritionally imbalanced diet, would probably still grow older, but would have more problems because he's not been able to build up an efficient system from because he probably didn't have a balanced nutritional diet. So raw, therefore, will ensure that you have longevity with a good quality of life because you have strong immune systems. Your muscle formation is really good. Your joints have been well built, so you're more mobile, you're more active, you're more curious mentally because all parts of your body are well oiled and well fed by a good balanced diet. Also, you would require very little supplements. So for my dogs, I've actually probably gone to the vet once in 5 or 6 years for some amount of vaccination and maybe the one odd checkup, to check on joints and the genetic problems that they have. But other than that, I've never had to go to a vet. So I've never had to supplement anything for my dogs because everything is available in their raw diet. And when you do the annual health checks to check on their health and well-being, it's textbook numbers across the board in all their medical reports. So that obviously means that they're making the best use of their diet. They're able to absorb it best. They have a strong immune system, so they're healthier. They're able to ward off diseases much better than most other dogs would. They're able to ward off infections much better than another dog would who does not have the right kind of diet. So that's where I would say would be the long-term effects of a good diet. And to be very frank, okay, Mansi is asking, can we give raw diet and boiled one both? Well, you could. There are all kinds of philosophies. To be very frank, one needs to figure out what works best for our dogs. You can do boiled and you can do raw together. There are people who do it, I know. But if you do it in the same meal, like I said, one kind of food has more amount of moisture, has a different structure. The boiled meat has been heat treated, so the proteins have broken down already. Moisture content has come down. It requires a different kind of digestion, and so it makes sense to not give them together in the same meal. You can do it on alternate days, on separate days. Maybe the morning meal can have raw, and you can do the next day, you can do boiled if you couldn't find raw. It's not like it's not blasphemous. It's not like you can't do it. It's not ideal to do it, but you can do it if you really have to. Nothing will happen to a dog in like one odd meal being changed like that. As long as you ensure that the staple food, if your staple diet is a raw diet, ensure that you have raw the maximum number of times, and you can do the one odd, different diet as a treat or in a different, as a snack, or you're traveling and you couldn't find a good raw sauce. You can definitely go ahead and give a good grain-free kibble for a meal or two. There's nothing wrong with experimenting with different textures as long as you stick to the staple diet, which is raw. I would like to know about the balanced diet. My lab is 8 plus, mostly veg diet. Could you please specify the amount of protein that can be given in a day? Okay, so this is again a specific question. Manisha, I would like you to please ping me separately and we'll figure out how we can answer that for you. Um, any demerits or special precautions needed to be taken while feeding raw? So, so far I've seen almost no demerits of feeding raw. The only demerit that I could think of is if you have not bought it fresh enough. Let's say you were careless about what kind of meat you brought for your dog and it is not fully fresh, you can end up having a couple of tummy upsets. Even that, given that the dog has a much more acidic gut than most of the other animals, you'll actually see dogs or strays, they actually, when they scavenge from garbage dumps, they're actually eating stale food. When they pick up a bone from somewhere, they actually dig up a hole and bury that bone and have it 7 days later, and nothing happens to them. A dog's gut is much more acidic than, say, a herbivore's gut or an omnivore's gut. We are omnivores. cows and lambs and all are herbivores. They have more alkaline guts. We also have more alkaline guts. A dog, being a carnivore, has a very, very acidic gut. So if you do have some amount of bacteria forming on a particular meat, the dog actually manages to handle it quite well once he has taken it in. Of course, if it's too bad, you might end up having a tummy upset as he transitions to as he tries to absorb it. But other than that, there are no demerits of a raw diet. The only demerit I can think of is if you're not giving it balanced, if you're not ensuring you have the right proportion of muscle, bone, organ pieces in the right proportion for your dog, then you will over time build long-term health hazards like deficiencies, and then you'd have to end up supplementing and giving your dog medications. But that basically is a factor of less research. The pet parent does need to ensure that they research and know their proportions well, have consulted with a nutritionist to figure out those proportions. Once you know the proportions, you just maintain an Excel sheet somewhere on your computer or in your notebook, do broad calculations, and you know that on a weekly basis how much of meat, how much of organ, and how much of bone you need to give your dog. And that's about it when it comes to raw feeding. Um, Other demerits might be that if you have special medical conditions and you need to tweak your diet, your nutritional profile of your meats accordingly, then and you've not done the right research to do it, that could be a one possible demerit of feeding raw to a dog with a specific medical condition. But other than that, I don't think there are many demerits of feeding raw. It's actually the gold standard in dog diets at this point of time. It is a choice, though, like I said, it's not something that you have to do. It is an option, very much doable in India, and that's what I'm here to share with you. So please go ahead and try, but do your research beforehand when you're doing it. Any other questions? Let's see. How early can we? Okay, this is a very good question, Mitali. Thank you for asking it. How early can we start giving a raw diet to a pup? You can start feeding a raw diet between 6 to 8 weeks of age. It needs to, the transition of a raw diet for a puppy is slightly different. You need to ensure that initially cut the meat into really small pieces, because the puppy obviously still doesn't know how to chew. You then have to use softer bones and give it to the dog to experiment on, so that it can start building jaw strength as he tries. So you need to try and use chicken neck pieces or chicken wing pieces, which are much softer bones. Give it to the dog to kind of mess around with. You can probably try mashing it a little so that the bones break a little and become easier for the dog to utilize. The chicken mince, the small pieces are really important, because the dog still has not built the jaw strength to cut and tear, and it needs to understand how to use its jaws to take the meat in. But between 6 to 8 weeks, you can easily start your dog first with a little bit of chicken mince, then with a little bit of egg, and you will see them do beautifully with it. Again, smaller quantities in more frequent meals, just like you would do a transition for an adult dog. What else then? On which number, Shalu Katoch, on which number can you be contacted? My numbers are available on my Facebook profile itself. I show up as Devisri Sarkar, and you could ping me over there. Dogspot has sent that message across. So please go ahead and ping me there. You will find numbers and contacts over there. 4-year-old lab with genetic hip dysplasia. So hip dysplasia, just FYI, is a genetic condition. There is no dog that gets hip dysplasia later. Hip dysplasia is a genetic condition where the pelvic joint of the dog has not formed the way it should be forming normally. It generally happens, mostly happens because of inbreeding. There could be other factors as well. But genetic hip dysplasia is what it is. Hip dysplasia is a genetic condition. It's overweight, 8 kgs, 4 years old. A Labrador that is 8 kgs and 4 years old, that does not sound right. Is currently on diet kibble with some supplements, was the same, elder of 8 years. Shelly, Seni, please contact me. I would need more information to help you on this one. So please reach out. Any other important questions that I could go ahead before I summarize. Would the soft bones harm the esophagus? No, raw bones in general do not harm the any part of the gut as long as you're giving the right kind of bones. There are the weight bearing bones of the animals, like the leg bones and the calf bones, which basically have that big cylindrical thing that carries the marrow. Those are the bones that could splinter if the dog is not able to chew it right. So do not give them as edible bones. They're meant to be sitting and gnawing on. But if you give neck bone, spine bone, and wing bone when it comes to chicken and turkey and all of those kind of animals, if you give the softer bones, which are basically the spine bones and the rib bones, you will find that the dog will never really get hurt as long as it's raw. The minute you move to cooked, you are going to end up bones are going to be a hazard because cooking in high temperatures makes them more brittle, and that's when they could splinter and go and puncture esophagus. There are very many vets who say not to feed cooked chicken bones. Absolutely, cooked any bones, not just chicken bones, Tanushri. Cooked any bones. The vets are very right to say that you do not feed any cooked bones, because cooked bones, unless you've overcooked them and made them totally mushy, in which case they have no nutritional value at all. If you're cooking a chicken bone, it is going to become more splintery. And when your dog cuts into it, it's going to just break open into shards, and that could puncture the gut. So if you're cooking, it's not the right. If you're giving chicken bones raw, it's fantastic because they're not as splintery. They do very well in the gut and they get naturally broken down. It takes a little more time to digest, but it works beautifully. Right. My little Maltese 4-year-old, no problem at all. We'll have this conversation offline because, again, when it comes to specific cases, I might not be able to help on this call. Okay, so let me quickly summarize. A raw diet is an excellent diet for your dog, provided you have done your research around what the right proportions are for your kind of dog. It is a science in itself. You cannot just give meat to your dog and say that I'm feeding raw day in and day out. You do need to ensure you have put it in the right proportion of muscle, bone, and organ so that macronutrients and micronutrients are well balanced when you're giving this on a day on day basis. They don't have to be balanced every single day, but if you look at a proportion over a period of time, it is actually something that you would need to do. Only then will it be safe. If you're giving a good raw diet, a good balanced raw diet to your dog, you will end up ensuring that he has made the best use of his meal. Most of it is absorbed because it is already bioavailable to him, and therefore it gives him an excellent gut with good healthy gut microbiomes. It gives him good strong bones, it gives him a strong immune system, it gives him clean teeth, it gives him a shiny coat, because he is utilizing the most out of the natural nutrients in the raw food because they are most bioavailable in their natural form. As a result, you have a fitter dog with a better with the better ability to deal with the challenges of everyday life in its environment through exercise, through movement, through interaction, both mental and physical, because he's got the right nutrition to keep him fit and face those scenarios. However, it is a choice again. A lot of times, while all dogs benefit from a raw diet, all parents may not be willing to make that choice for their dog for various reasons. Now, there is where I say it's not compulsory. It's not like you're doing anything bad for your dog. There are all kinds of diet choices. Only thing is, whatever you're choosing for your dog is what your dog is going to be. He doesn't have a choice of his own because you are the pet parent. He is a domesticated dog that is not able to source his food for himself. So it becomes important for all of you wise people to read up, because you are ultimately responsible for the dietary needs of your dog. Since he is not able to procure his food himself, he is dependent on you. So it is your responsibility to read well, figure out what works best in your lifestyle with your availability of meats around you and the kind of different sources. Read up and then get to the best kind of diet for your dog. Thank you.